About 30 years ago, I became a therapist. I'm going to give a short, brief introduction so you understand where my passion comes from. So I became a therapist, a generic therapist. I was living in Lakewood at the time, and I was actually the first therapist in private practice in Lakewood. And started doing the work. And as the years went by, the work became more and more involved with helping struggling kids and helping families work out how to hang on to their kids as the phenomena that then became known as off the derech began evolving and began hitting us. I must tell you that I was probably as arrogant as most people. Then I had a very young family. My kids were small, and they were all doing what they're meant to be doing. I didn't have teenagers yet. So I comforted myself that everything was going to be fine, and probably didn't look very well at those who had teenagers and were struggling. But then my wife and I were gifted as our eldest daughter went off the derech at 14. And in those days, it wasn't very popular for a girl to go off the derech. Boys were doing it, but girls were doing it very, very quietly. And it caught us by surprise. I must tell you, we were stunned, as a matter of fact. Couldn't believe it had happened. Didn't understand why or how it had happened. We knew we had a loving home. We knew we had a good relationship. We thought the components were there. And then right under our feet, our eldest daughter went off. Baruch Hashem, today she's married, and she's frum, and she has kids, and Kanena is doing well. But it was frightening. It was very frightening. During those years, no one talked about the world of the off the derech. The whole terminology wasn't used. We're talking about the late 80s. There was no OTD. There was no language of it. I remember in the early days, before all the Mishpacha magazines and Ami magazines and all the other magazines, there was the Jewish Observer. I don't know if anyone remembers the Jewish Observer. And the Jewish Observer had an article back in somewhere towards the late 80s, where a mechanech had talked about this off the derech sugya, these struggling teens going off the derech, what it was all about. And in that article, they brought out a little gray box. And in the box, they highlighted that these words that more or less said that the overwhelming consensus of Orthodox mental health professionals, no one asked me, by the way, and I was an Orthodox, at least I think I was, Orthodox mental health professional, but nevertheless, the overwhelming consensus of Orthodox mental health professionals was that kids going off the derech were coming from dysfunctional homes. This was the understood, this was the facts back in those days. It was the first time I'd ever sort of come out of myself, and I wrote together with a colleague to the Jewish Observer and sharply criticized what he had said. I knew it wasn't true. I knew it wasn't true. I knew my family wasn't dysfunctional, number one, but I also knew there was not even a consensus of what is dysfunctional. Most homes, I can tell you, in the research I've done in my life, if we would really, be honest about what is dysfunctional, either we're all dysfunctional or none of us are dysfunctional. Everyone has a little bit of dysfunction. And I'll tell you something else that's fascinating. That a home that has a kid going off the derech, that child will put the home into dysfunction. They will cause dysfunction in the home. So when suddenly the outside world systems see this kid going off the derech, and they see what that kid's doing to the home, they say, you see, look, dysfunctional home. But it's putting the cart before the horse. What I saw were nice Jewish people, like we were, trying to do the best we could, with absolutely zero understanding of how and why our kids went off the derech. We had no clue. So I wrote a very stiff letter together with a colleague critiquing this mechanech and his view. And I actually pointed out that if we allow such a concept, that kids going off the derech are coming from dysfunctional homes, if we allow that concept, then every one of us who has a kid who's struggling, when that kid starts walking out the house, maybe dressing not quite so appropriate or acting so appropriate, we're going to go crazy to try and prevent that child walking out dressed like that, because what we're doing is advertising to the whole world, look, they're dysfunctional. Take a look at their kid. That's a dysfunctional home. And that very micromanaging of our kids to try and stop ourselves being ashamed publicly that we are dysfunctional caused us to micromanage our kids even more, which of course caused them to go off the derech quicker. So allowing a concept to reverberate in the community that kids going off the derech coming from dysfunctional homes was actually causing more kids to go off the derech. This was the argument I put. Response to the letter they published was the mechanech then wrote back his critique of my critique, and together with his letter came thousands of letters from Klal Yisrael to the editors who sided with me. Thousands. And in fact, because of that, they printed a whole edition, I think in '89, that was just dedicated to kids on the fringe. And so we broke the sugya open. Since then, I'm talking about 1989, I've been researching and searching to try and understand this sugya so that we can get information to young parents especially to try and prevent this problem happening, to understand what to look for, to try and help our kids so we can maybe help them not go off the derech, and at the same time help those of us in the trenches who had teenagers who already were struggling to see, well, how can we bring them back? So I ran some conferences through Nefesh, the international network of Orthodox mental health professionals. We ran 4 think tank conferences, no lectures or drushes, but we sat down, rolled up our sleeves, and had 100 people sit down together for a few days in a hotel and debate and argue and try and work out the sugya. What is this sugya? Why are kids going off? To me, it's so crucial that we can understand and have some system and not just simply say dysfunctional homes. Number one, it's reckless talk that causes more kids to go off. But it's also cruel to parents. It's pashut cruel because it's simply not true. What is true, that when you have kids who are off the derech, having them during that tkufa where they're off the derech, you simply have to allow your home to slip into some degree of dysfunction from the shitas and beliefs and traditions that you wish you could have within your family system. You have to let it slip away a little bit. So you do allow some degree of dysfunction, but it's not the dysfunction that causes kids to go off the derech. By the way, I'm not promoting dysfunctional homes. If you have one, work on it. But that's not the reason. I've seen dysfunctional homes that would actually qualify for being dysfunctional, where the kids were all valedictorians in their schools. Go figure. How did that happen? And I bet you we all know people like that, who seem to have everything wrong in their chinuch, and they have these amazing kids just working out great. Go figure. So here's what I'm after. I'm after working on this word resilience. What I'm trying to do all these years is refine more and more and more. What do we have to do as parents to try and create resilience in our children, so when the various factors that affect their lives impact their lives, the chances are that that drop when they are impacted by various traumas, and we'll come to talk about whatever's impacting them, but when they're hit by these influences, it'll be a shallower dip, and it'll be a dip that almost predictably has a curve upwards afterwards. They come back. They come back to a framework that we can embrace them and enjoy them and have nachas together with them, whether they're exactly punked in the exact, in the Chassidish world or the Yeshivish world, they're back in the exact, I don't know. But certainly where they're happy, functional, frum, ehrliche kids who grow up and get married and bring up frum families, and we can enjoy them and we can help them with their journey. I'm after this word resilience. Resilience means the ability to bounce back. Resilience means you have internally whatever it needs that should you face difficulties, struggles, and traumas in life that throw you off from the derech on which you were journeying, resilience means you're probably going to come back. You're going to have the internal ability to come back after that ride. It may not prevent. Having strength and resilience doesn't mean that every trauma is like water off a duck's back. That's not true. It'll affect a person, and we're not superhuman. That's not reasonable. But what is reasonable, that if I can give you information tonight, and that's my goal, factual information for how do you develop with your children resilient? How do you make resilient kids? Not only will it help if chas v'shalom the kids slide, but it's a model. The model that creates resilience is the model of recovery too. It works on both ends. And that's what my goal is tonight, to see if I can share that with you concisely. Listen, it's a course. To do these things I'm going to talk about tonight, this is a talk. This is not an educational 15-week, 15-semester course. This stuff, to learn this stuff takes a lot of time. But tonight is ten l'chacham v'yisach hamoed, is to give you a roadmap that perhaps together you can work on and think about, as I've been doing for years and years and years of my life, so that we can help our kids, so we can really truly help our kids. Here's my experience. This is what we're up against. What we're up against is if we look at the rove kids in our communities, the kamas of 100% of all our children, at best, what we're looking at is about 20% of our kids, all boys and girls across the board, are naturally, happily, easily doing our system and doing it well. We got about 1 in 5 if we're lucky. That's, by the way, I think optimistic. But I'm willing to say that I've had this voted on. I've done kinusim of hundreds and hundreds of mechanchim, where I've spent hours with them explaining, what is the successful kid in our system, and had them vote. And we're looking at about 20% who naturally, that means they don't need tutoring, extra tutoring, they don't need threats and punishments, bribes and rewards, they don't need medication, they don't need mentors, mental health professionals, OT, they don't need any of this stuff, and they just do the system well. So you're going to say, are there any kids like that? There are. About 20% of the kids don't need all that stuff to do well. The rest of the 80% fall into, roughly speaking, 4 groups. And I believe that what I'm going to try and sell to you in terms of resilience will work for all these 4 groups. The 80% fit into these 4 groups. At the lower end in terms of their shmiras ha-mitzvahs is the OTD, the off the derech. The kids who have already cut off to some degree, and they've abandoned our system, whether hopefully temporarily, until we can help them re-embrace and find their way, hopefully. But meanwhile, they're the OTD, the off the derech. Then there's the OOD. There's the off our derech, where they're not living the life exactly, but you know what? They keep Shabbos and they keep kashrus, but they don't want to dress the way we do, and they don't want to act the way we do, and they want to learn different things, and they enjoy themselves through singing and through all sorts of other, kind of experiences. But they're off our derech, but they're still, in my humble opinion, wonderful from kids. If we can reach their souls and we can really help their craving the connection. Then we've got what I call the ONT, these 2 groups. They dress the part. They look pretty much like the rest of us. They look pretty much like the way you would like them to dress and like them to look. They go through. And then there's the ONTDD. These are the other 2 groups. This is the system, go through the motions. But if you really connect with them, you realize they're either uninspired or disillusioned. These are the kids, they come back from yeshiva and they'll sleep till who knows when. Forget about Safsman Kriyashma. What's that? It's Ben Azmanim. What's that got to do with anything? There's a disconnect somewhere where they're good kids, they're going through the motions, but they're either uninspired or they're really disillusioned. It's not talking to them, but because they have good midas and backgrounds, whatever it is, they kind of stay with it, or perhaps they just didn't have trauma. Could be, don't know. What I want to present, and what we're going to talk, again, this is by way of introduction so you understand where I'm coming from, is how to help all these four groups. How to help all four, because the 20%, believe me, they're doing fine. They do well without us. They just do it. Their neshamas are just somehow inspired to just naturally do the system. But everybody else, all these other four groups, we need the tools of resilience if we're going to help them properly. And if we don't, they're in trouble. And I'll tell you, they're in trouble when they get married, because the ONTDD and the ONTDU, when they get married to each other, they bring up another generation of disconnected, uninspired, disillusioned kids who don't really have a chance, and they will be the OOD and the OTDs of the future. So it's crucial that we acknowledge this and we realize we've got a large camas of kids that we've got to reach, and we can reach them if we're willing to work on ourselves and stop working on the kids. And I hope that resonates deeply with everyone. If we can work on ourselves first and not just put all the effort into working on the kids. Let's fix the kids. Let's fix the kids. How about we fix ourselves? And what I'm going to talk about tonight is how we organize and reorganize the way we relate to our kids so that we can build in them the resilience that will help them throughout their lives. That's the goal. To me, the fact that 80% are not doing well, they're simply not good enough. It's just not good enough. And we should do better. And we can do better. So let me introduce the ideas. Again, these ideas should be a 15-week course with textbooks and analysis and all the rest. Oh, but tonight is just Rosh Hashanah with concepts and ideas that hopefully you'll review and chaza over. There's two basic concepts that we have to understand if we're going to understand why kids struggle. And then I'm going to give you four basic concepts for how we're going to stop that, or how we're going to create resilience in them to help them resist all this. Here's the two concepts why they struggle. Let's understand, I don't know if you've heard the words an attachment disorder. In the mental health field, we're fond of using these words, an attachment disorder. An attachment disorder is typically thought of as age more or less 0 to 3. The real attachment disorder in the literature, and we're going to expand on that tonight, although they call this pseudo-psychology, but I think it's real. I think it's real. It's genuine and real. But in the essence of attachment disorder is the 0 to 3 age group. In those years, does the child feel, the baby, this little kid growing up, do they feel a healthy attachment to their parents, to their primary caretakers? If you look at a model of normative childhood development, there's really just 3 stages. There's just 3 components. Normative childhood development ought to be 0 to about 2, should be unconditional love. That means whatever they do, we laugh, smile, and hug them. That includes if you just recently begged your husband to paint the salon, the living room, and he finally got round to painting it, and your 1.5-year-old found a red permanent marker while you were on the phone and decided this is a perfect board, this wall, to draw on, and you come in and find red marker all over the freshly painted living room that you've been waiting years to get painted. You pull out the camera. You laugh. You give them a hug and a kiss. You take the thing away from them. What you don't do is go screaming around the house trying to blame someone who left this marker out. where the child hears these angry voices, this pain and anger around them because of what they've done. Instead, you laugh and you get the camera out and you pose with them and you have pictures for the scrapbook or to show at their Sheva Brachos when you show the slideshow. And everyone thinks it's cute and adorable. And when they're eating their Cheerios and you're feeding them, and you look away for a moment and they spill the whole bowl with the milk, the works, right on your lap, or they throw it on your sheitel, on your clothing, you laugh. 0 to 2. You just laugh. You think it's funny. We were once on a plane, my wife and I, trapped on a British Airways plane heading to Gateshead. And it was on the runway. Brits don't talk on planes. By the way, Americans don't stop talking. But Brits don't talk. It's all very civil. So we're quietly on the plane, on the runway, strapped in. And suddenly this noise, you all know what that noise is when your child, the baby on your lap, has diarrhea. And you know that noise and that smell, that sweet smell that permeates the entire plane on the runway? And when we got off the plane, my wife's clothing is completely covered in it. You take pictures. You laugh. You don't get mad. 0 to 2, normative parenting, is 0 to 2. It doesn't matter what they do. Of course you try to avoid situations like that. You don't leave crayons lying around, permanent markers, and etc., etc. We shelter them, we protect them. But when they do, which inevitably they're going to disrupt your life, you laugh, you smile, you think it's cute. If you do that well, by the way, you continue doing that for the rest of their lives. That's all you do, 0 to 2. At 2, if you've done it well, you then introduce limit setting. You set limits. And because you did so successfully the 0 to 2 unconditional love, that when you do the limit setting from 2 till about 14, somewhere around there, they accept, grudgingly, but they accept the limit setting as an extension of the unconditional love. And when you do that properly, where the foundation is this unconditional love, this mattress of love, and on that comes the limit setting, then when they're around 15, 16, they turn to you for guidance. By the way, this is all Chazals. I have Chazals for all these Gemaras and Chazals and Rishonim for all of this. This is parenting. They turn to you for guidance with Parnasa, guidance with Shidduchim, guidance with, life, learning, whatever they're going to do. This is how the system's meant to work. When kids have healthy attachment, 0 to 3 is sort of the early years of attachment. So we're beginning to build resilience for them where they feel loved come what may. That gets interrupted tragically in most homes, 80%. It's just tragically interrupted. We live such difficult lives and challenging lives. I'll give you a mashal. Just a mashal that we can all understand. Mother has a newborn. The bris is coming up. It's a couple of days before the bris. Nursing is going a little difficult. She's like not sleeping well. She's very stressed, understandably, but trying to make it work. Turns out they don't have so much money. Don't have the money for the bris, for the hall, for everything. Husband's job, he just gets a letter that he got fired. He got fired. And he comes in panicking into the bedroom with the letter to talk to his wife about the fact he just got fired and they can't pay the mortgage, when she immediately says, so did you book the hall? You got the hall? Did you book everything? Did you give them the money? You gave them the deposit? As he's walking in with the letter, and he looks out the window as he's got the letter and having a nervous breakdown as it is, he looks out the window and sees they're towing his car. You got the picture? And in that moment, he gives out, yelling, nervous, leave me alone. How? What do you mean the bris? The house? What's going to be? And he loses it. And this baby is nursing, which is meant to be the warmest, nurturing experience a human being could ever wish for on their life. There's no nurturing experience more meaningful than that moment that's converted into this tense, angry, fearful, stressed experience that breaks the healthy attachment because it doesn't make a child feel safe. In fact, the child goes through life from that moment on completely unaware of why they feel scared when they feel hugged. When they feel connected, they feel frightened, and they don't even know why. They have no clue. Healthy attachments form the foundation on which we build the relationship with our kids that creates resilience. Without the healthy attachment, and it's so easy to be frustrated and overwhelmed with two parents working and there's not enough parents and the tuitions and everything else, and it's such a stressful life. And our kids feel that in our body language, in our facial expression, and our tone of voice. And they sense this disconnect. They sense the disconnect between the parents who are arguing, or frustrated with each other, or tense about dealing with life. And so they don't learn how to attach properly, which affects all their relationships for the rest of their life. They feel awkward. They feel this disconnect. They feel lonely. On top of the attachment problem, and it goes into the rest of their teenage years, you can understand as they start struggling in our system. And the first response to a struggling kid is always anger. Nebuch. It's always anger. Our first response is we're frightened of their behavior. And we do old-fashioned discipline, put them in their place. And so they get less connected to us. I said a whole piece once that I called the happiness pleasure paradigm, where kids go off the derech, they're hurting inside. They feel disconnected to us to begin with. It's all part of that attachment disorder where they don't feel the relationship with us. And it's like a hole in the heart. And to fill the hole in the heart, they listen to music that's more exciting, more interesting than perhaps we have in the home. They want to read literature or view things that are outside our framework because it's exciting. Mayim genuvim yimtaku, right? Stolen waters are more sweeter. So they look for other stuff to fill the hole. Only no one told them that when we catch them doing this stuff, listening to this music, interested in things a little bit on the fringe outside our world, no one told them we're going to get angry with them. And we think that getting angry with them will stop them. Guess what anger does? It makes the hole in the heart bigger because it breaks the relationship with you and your child even more. So as you break down the relationship by catching them, and we always catch them, whether it's in school or at home, we catch them. And when we catch them, we get angry thinking that's going to stop them. Actually, that anger breaks down our relationship with our kids, which makes the hole in the heart bigger, not smaller. So now they need more pleasure activities to fill the hole in the heart because they're hurting. They're in pain. And so they do more edgy things, more inappropriate behaviors. Shoes, hairstyles, clothing, whatever they're doing, they're looking to feel a little lift, to feel special, to fill the hole in the heart. They're not concept rebellion. They're not philosophers that they've worked out, 15 steers in Tanya, and that's why we're going to, slug you up. Please. There's totally not shaykhs to it. It's all just pain. They're hurting because they're not attached to us. And foolishly, because we didn't understand, is when we catch them again now doing worse stuff, we get more angry with them. And the more angry with them detaches us from them even more. which creates a bigger hole in their heart, for now which they need bigger pleasure activities to fill the hole in the heart, so they go to drugs. And then we catch them again. And we get more angry with them, and so you can see the happiness pleasure paradigm. We're all looking for happiness. Happiness is only in a relationship with the parents. The happiness is in the embrace of a long-term, meaningful relationship. That's where happiness is, nowhere else. And for most kids, that's with their parents. So as we break, God forbid, and that breaks down because we use old-fashioned chinuch systems because no one told us what we were meant to do. And we use what most of us, grew up with or heard from previous generations, or stamaza. We're frustrated, so we get angry. Not that we hold we should, but we do. It distances us. It breaks the attachments to our kids, and so facilitates the breakdown. You're getting the picture? And they just drift away. Imagine on top of that comes trauma. I mean, it's heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking. Imagine on top of that attachment problem, the kid experiences trauma. How are they going to survive? How are they going to, what do they have with which to cope? How can they deal with it? How on earth can they possibly survive if they don't have the attachments and now they experience trauma on top of that? Because I tell you what happens with trauma. This is part of the attachment theory. There's a little piece of the brain, little small piece inside the brain called the amygdala. A lot of science today in psychotherapy, understanding like the new sort of movement in psychotherapy is understanding brain science much better. So there's a little piece of the brain called the amygdala, whose primary purpose is to keep us safe. The amygdala is like a hyperbolic dish on your head, a radar scanner that scans the world for threats. Threats to my personal dignity, threats to my survival, threats to me being hurt. It scans. So when you're a healthy person, the information the amygdala has, filtered through your brain and experiences, is that basically there aren't too many threats, and if they come your way, mommy and tati are there to help you. For the 20%, for the kids who grow up with this, in this magical world, their amygdala doesn't really see much threatening stuff. In fact, when someone gets angry with someone whose amygdala, who grew up in an environment where they had the resilience, it was taught to them, where they feel safe, such a person has rachmanis on the person who's angry with them. They feel bad for Yenim. Their amygdala is not seeing a threat, it's seeing an opportunity for chesed. But in someone who's been hurt, who doesn't have the deep connection, who didn't feel safe, who was that nursed child in the dugma, in the example, who was frightened of the body language, tone of voice, facial expressions, sounds it was picking up, of fear, their amygdala is scanning and it sees it non-stop everywhere. Every angry face, every tense look, every rigid posture, even passion, a passionate speech looks like a criticism. They feel threatened. The amygdala is looking to save me from threats. And someone who grew up in a world, an environment where they felt those threats, where they experienced those threats, it's like they have permanent PTSD. What's PTSD? In the true PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, in the definition in the books of PTSD, one of the statements says the following. Think about kids, their reaction when they go nuts. Everyone says, my kid goes nuts. I barely said anything and they go crazy. Right? Anyone know that experience? Right? Does anyone not know that experience? You ever seen the psychotic look in your teenager when they look like they're going to go psychotic on you? They go crazy. They're having a panic attack. Listen to the language of PTSD and think about your struggling teen. It says when they're exposed, it says they will have a severe psychological reaction at exposure to internal or external cues that symbolize or resemble an aspect of the original trauma. If the original trauma to them was fear and an angry, mad parent yelling and screaming, then they have a traumatic reaction informed by the amygdala to protect themselves, and they have a freak-out attack. And then we blame them for that too. We blame them for that too, but all that's happening is their amygdala is trying to protect them from what they perceive as fear. And then we go and diagnose them, and then we run them to psychiatrists, and we get them medicated so we can start training them to be drug addicts and teach them how to modify their behavior through drugs. And then we wonder why so many kids do drugs. Imagine these poor kids who start off with an attachment disorder because we didn't know how to attach. And there's many, many reasons why parents didn't learn from their own parents and from their own grandparents. They didn't learn, especially after the war. They didn't have the tools for how to attach. They had the tools for how to survive. And in the world of survival, there's no room for niceness. There's no room for softness and shefala and bubala and mamala. Not when you're surviving. And that world filtered down into these kids where they have improper attachments to begin with, where they don't feel attached, they don't feel safe, connected. They're hurting inside. There's a disconnect. And then trauma strikes. And then they have PTSD and we blame them. And all their behavior they're doing, whether it's the funny hairstyles or the 3 piercings or the funny shoes or the short skirt or everything they're doing is simply to try and feel good. All they want to do is feel good. They don't know this, and if you debate them, they'll turn it into a philosophy. But it's not. It's simply an attempt not to hurt. Nothing else. They're little kids who don't want to hurt, and they'd like to feel safe and loved. And then we get angry with them. It's a crazy, crazy system. It doesn't help, it just destroys. So what do we do? I think I made the case for what we shouldn't do. And I don't want to go into all the traumas, but if you just as a final footnote, what trauma does to these poor kids, they are completely in fight or flight. They want to survive, nothing else. And so you're going to go and reason with them and debate with them, whether it's sexual trauma, which happens to so many of our kids, unfortunately, which, if there's anything we have to do as a community is face that, deal with it, confront it, educate our communities so parents, young parents, are desperate for information. What is the sugya of molestation? How does it happen? Where does it happen? How can we protect our kids? It's crucial. You have to get education on this. Must, because it's widespread and the trauma is utterly devastating. There's not a day of my career goes by when I'm not trying to repair the damage of sexually traumatized children. Not a day. Every single day. And I'll probably tell you that most of what I do, most of my life, whether it's with young kids or adults or divorced people or damaged adults trying to keep their marriages, it all goes back to that. And then you add the second trauma, which is learning trauma, where we have to shift our system somehow respectfully, where most kids actually enjoy going to yeshiva every day. They enjoy learning because the learning is on a level that makes sense for them. We have to shift the system to address most kids, not the miyut. It doesn't make sense. And then we've got all the kids with what I call de facto learning disabilities, where their life problems and issues surrounding them are so intense, they can't learn even if they want to. They're not learning disabilities. But the pasha, the tsaras of life, fills their heads and they can't learn. Those are all types of trauma. And they make kids frightened. They throw a child into fight or flight, into an anxiety mode. And that, built on attachment disorder, is utterly destructive. It is a disaster. And it is 100% predictable those kids are going to go off. And they do. And it's nothing to do with dysfunctional homes. Those same homes have kids doing gewaldig. That's the problem. They always say, look, I got all these other kids who are steiging away. So what are the skills? What do we need to do with our kids so that we can keep them more safe, so we can help them be resilient? This is the take-home for tonight. This is the message. What I built till now is why. To be mechayev what I want to say now. And these are the 4 S's, I call them. The 4 S's, and this you have to go home with, is what we have to do with all our kids if we're going to create resilience in our children. And you'll never hear this enough. And he needs to be chazed and chazed and chazed and talked over with your spouse and worked on, not as long as you have a teenager still in your house. We are, my wife and I, 2 months away from not having any more teenagers. We're going to run around with T-shirts. We survived. We survived. We did it. My youngest is turning 20. We're just almost there. But as long as you have a teenager, and then you do the grandchildren, so it really doesn't make a difference. You need this for the grandchildren too. The 4 S's. This is how we create the attachments. This is how we create resilience. This is what you take home tonight. And the 4 S's are safe, secure, seen, and soothed. S-O-O-T-H-E-D. Soothed. Safety. Kids have a right to feel safe. We gave the mashal of the 0 to 2 with the nursing mother and the father screaming and yelling because he's frustrated and disappointed and angry. Kids have to feel safe. Safety means technical things, but it also means spiritually and psychologically safe. Kids, all kids, our teenagers, all of them. I'm going to take attachment out of the 0 to 3, which is how the world out there likes to define it. But I think attachment is the whole way through, and it's how we bring our kids back, by working on attachment. Our kids have to feel safe. They have to sit at our Shabbos table and not be afraid of being humiliated. They have to be in a home, not just where the doors are locked and the windows are locked at night, where the parents drive and they don't drive drunk or reckless and scare the kids. Those are obvious things. But they need to feel safe, that they're protected, that they're honored, that they're respected, that they're loved. They need to feel safe that they're not frightened at a Shabbos table because someone's going to ask them questions on their parsha sheet or on their chumash that week and humiliate them at the table and make them feel like an idiot. They have to feel safe that no one's going to hurt them. They have to feel safe that their parents are not going to hurt each other. They're going to respect each other. They have to be in an environment of safety. Safety is actually in 5 areas. There are 5. Actually, I'm going to publish a 6th soon. A 6th area. So let's do all 6. The 5 primary ones that's muskam in the world of psychology are the 5 areas of abuse, which are physical abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, stuff like saying, you're never going to make a good mother. You think you're going to shtay, you think you're going to be a good father the way you behave. Psychological abuse. sexual abuse, and spiritual abuse. The last one is what I call system abuse. It's where the kid was put into a system that they couldn't possibly achieve well in. They couldn't steigen. They didn't have the keilim, but they were put into a system that wasn't going to work for them. That's abuse, because it destroys and erodes the kid's sense of self. And they hate you for it, but they don't know why. But they feel disconnected. Emotional, physical abuse is obvious. That we've tried very hard in the world, and most of the world, we grew up being caned. Today you do that, that's like you go to jail. We have to adjust to the world of what's appropriate. There's another drasha for another time, what changed in the world. I have a whole drasha on it, why the world changed, how the world changed. Oh, but the fact is the world changed. And what we grew up with that was not physical abuse to us is today physical abuse. And it breaks the attachments, it's pashut. Emotional abuse. A kid has to feel safe emotionally where they feel unconditionally loved. And that means even if they're over 2 and they take the red crayon and they draw on the wall, that you don't smash them to pieces for it or make them feel like you're evil. In the world we're living in today, that means saying to a kid, first give me the pen, let me take the marker. But I don't know what that's about, honey. I don't know why you did it. Talk to me about it. Help me understand why you did that. We can't just go to the bam, bam world, the world of once what it was. It doesn't work anymore. It destroys our children. They have to feel safe physically, emotionally, psychologically. They have to feel safe that we're giving them the right messages about life, that we're teaching them what we actually live. We can't live one life. It's like when you're benching. It's such a, you're benching, so you start benching. You're benching, right? Here's how the average, benching. Ready? Watch benching, No, 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 no. What is that? You want to give a good example? Just bench like a heilige tzaddik. Give him a bencher and bench like a heilige tzaddik and tell him, Shefla, I'll bench with you afterwards if you want. Or bench part of it if they can't bench the whole thing. This whole new business, what are we telling them? It's crazy. We can't have, darshaning on the parsha about tzedakah, how chashuv it is, and when the Mashiach comes to the door, don't move. He can see through the window. Don't move. Psychological abuse. These things are tragic. Going to Kiddushim and stuffing ourselves, honoring people's time. With simchas, they make a time. Why should we go on time? I have to honor them. It's like psychological abuse. It's destroying values in our kids. And then we wonder why they do it to us. We have to live and personify the values we teach our kids, or we're doing psychological abuse. Don't darshan it. But if you're going to darshan, you got to live. We're great at darshaning. We're unbelievably good darshaners. We're definitely not as good livers as we are darshaners. We got to be consistent. Otherwise, that's psychological abuse, and it destroys the attachment. Do you see that? They don't feel they can respect us and feel they can look up to us. Sexual abuse goes without saying. It's rampant, as I said before, and we have to deal with it. It is destructive, and it's destroying these kids. I've quoted this time and time again. People will always misquote me on this. But looking at the off-the-derech world, the kids off the derech, in all the research I've done, 80% of those kids, sexual abuse was the mark of a patish. That's what took them off, 80%. I did not say 80% of all kids are sexually abused. I said of that group of the kids who are off, 80%. It's a massive problem we have to deal with. It breaks the attachments again. That they don't feel safe. This is all part of what it means for a child to feel safe in this world. So we have to become educated so we can protect our kids properly. And spiritual abuse. I mentioned some of those things, that we have to live consistently. If we darshan it, then we have to live it fully. Fully. And if we believe Mahu Rachum Avatu Rachum, then why are we always getting so angry and out of control with our kids? When we got caned, I was fortunate to have a father, Rabbi Shimon, who, when we got caned, it was a ritual. You had to bring the cane, you presented it to him. It was behind the bathroom. It was a miracle we could go to the bathroom because that's where it was kept. You had to go get it. You brought it down. You presented it. He took it. You were sent to your room. You went to your room. You put on about 10 pairs of underpants. I'm sure that's part of the deal. And then he came in 20 minutes later, sat down, all very calm. What did you do? You had to be misvada. What's wrong with it? You had to say. Will you do it again? No. I'm not sure if we meant it, but we had to say it. And then bend over the bed. You got 3 whacks, never talked about it again. It wasn't an angry, yelling, screaming event. I'm not saying we liked it. But it was like, today it's all this screaming and yelling and anger. That's abusive. It's spiritually abusive as well because it doesn't fit the values that we then go and darshan about on the parsha at the table about being a merachem and Hashem's a merachem. Where it's abusive and it disconnects us to our kids because it doesn't make them feel safe. And the last one I said is system abuse. Is where we put them in a system. We have expectations of our children to achieve things that they can't do. And then we try and force them into it with bribes and rewards and threats and who knows what, tutoring and medication and who knows what, because of our need, not because of their need. Because we have that need. And it just simply makes the kid feel, my parent doesn't understand me. You don't know me. And later on, they become teenagers and disappear. If we want to create resilience in our children, the first step is to make them feel safe in all these different dimensions. And as I said to you, Ten L'Chacham, each one of these we could talk hours about to bring out in detail what they are, but I think you understand. The second one is secure. Our kids' feet need to feel secure with us. They have to have the security that a Shabbos table is a safe place, that clothes are bought in the right season, that if there's holes in the shoes, they're going to get them, that school tuitions are paid, that if they go to camp, that they go to camp, things are taken care of. Not that we're always crying about, I can't afford this and I can't afford that, and why do you want this and why do you want that, and we didn't have it when we were kids, and why are you demanding it and why are you asking for it? We have to make our kids feel secure. It doesn't mean we have to give them everything or take massive loans. But when you talk to them in a way that makes them feel secure and cared for. They have to feel secure about their parents' marriage. I don't know there's any one ingredient more in attachment in the whole sugya than the kids feeling that their parents love each other and respect each other. I'm not sure there's a more important ingredient. The security of parents who respect and talk respectfully to each other, who work together, who love each other, who support each other, who are neither codependents nor independents, but they are interdependent. We share, we help each other through life. We're there for each other. There's nothing that creates security in our children greater than that, by the way. If there's the greatest model for resilience, for helping our children be resilient later on, is the work we put into our shalom bayis, into our relationship, a respectful relationship, a loving, respectful relationship, creates security. But they have to understand, they have to feel secure. They have to feel secure they're not going to be hurt or threatened or put down or humiliated. They have to feel secure that my parent is there for me. You know, in the days gone by, if we got hit by a Rebbe or a teacher in school, we dare not tell our father because he'd hit you because you got hit. You know, you came home, you got hit, ready, boom. What did you get hit for? And we thought that was normal. Today you do that, your kid's gone. Kid has to feel safe that you have his back. If they get bullied somewhere, that you sit down with them and talk to them about it. And you're there for them. Not, didn't I tell you not to play with him? What are you doing with her? I told you not to hang around. First, sit them on your lap. Soothe them. You know, be with them. Kid has to feel secure in life. That they have a feeling of hamshacha. There's an expectation of a pleasant Shabbos Suda, of a pleasant Yontef meal. Not that there's two nervous wrecks running around the house, convincing them that Erev Yontef is like, you know, let me just drop dead now. You know, I may as well go off the derech now. I mean, never what these poor kids say. Like, why do you like Pesach? You're so miserable for weeks before Pesach. You're a nervous wreck. Sukkot, the father's uptight about his lulav. I mean, my gosh, get up at the Eved lulav and love your kid. There's a greater zekeli vamveu in having a loving home where you've created resilient kids than having a lulav, this mamish, this lulav. I always tell people, you're out there with an esrog. Is your esrog kosher? Did you find a kosher? Yeah, I found a kosher. So what were you? Zekeli vamveu. Mehuda. I said, very nice. It's also mehuda to go home and help your wife. Which is a bigger hiddah? You really, the Eibishter wants you to leave your poor wife at home with all the kids screaming and crying. The Erev Yontef is a wreck because you're finding this mehuda esrog. Whoa, you got to find this esrog. I'm going to take it to shore and they're all going to say, oh, look at that esrog. Right, I'm going to feel so good, right? Security is this family that works together and loves each other and cares for each other. That's a chelik of creating the resilience of life, the attachment with you, where they want to be in your footsteps and continue this life, because this life feels safe and secure. Seen. The third one. You know how many people bring up their kids? You know, it's very interesting. You ever hear a drasha on chinuch? Someone always says, and usually at a very passionate moment, and they say it as if you've never heard this line before. Chaneichna pitake, Rabbi say. Chaneichna pitake. I got news for you. What does it mean? Do you know? I mean, you need like 10 PhDs in psychology to work out what your darko of your kid is. How do you know what's the chance of a husband and wife agreeing on one of their kids, what their darko is really? What is the derech of this kid? And let's say you got 7 or 8 kids. I mean, just do the math. How are you going to agree? How are you going to run a Shabbos table where you're doing hanecha pi darko? And you don't even agree with each other what darko is. This one needs more, and this one needs less, and this one needs, what? And yet somehow if you say the words, apparently everyone says, oh, yeah, I know. That feels better now. Now I know what to do. I'll be happy to come one time. I have a whole drasha, chiddush atzum, in what chanecha pidaka has. But I'll tell you, the bottom line, you have to look at your kids. They'll show you their darkoi. What they're doing is darkoi. That is darkoi. You don't have to be a PhD in psychology. You just have to take a look at what they need. Look at them. Let it emerge from them. Shift the problems to them and see what darko is. And it's all different. Kids have to be seen. They have to see themselves through their parents' eyes. When they're little, they get to know themselves from the look on your face, on the loving approval on the acknowledgement of their uniqueness. That this one's got a musical talent, and that one written talent, this one has a memory, and this one's in chesed. And they all do different things. They have steinus in different areas. And it's our job to reflect that back to, you know how people bring out kids? Okay, get the kids in the bath. Okay, get all the kids. It's the get the kids in the car. Get the kids to bed. Let's get the kids. It's like we have this thing called kids, this blob. That's just like, it doesn't make any sense, Rabbi say. The kids. They're all individuals. And we have to reflect back to them, I saw you. You are seen. I noticed your uniqueness. And I'm going to tell you what it is. And I'm going to enjoy it. What's special about you? Instead of what Nebuch, so many people think that that's what Mesoros HaTorah is so far-fetched. Okay, there's a mahalach. I'm not arguing with that. But they think that I've got to make my kid in my image. It sounds like a Avodah Zarah, actually. It's like ridiculous. Torah says the verkehrt. We have to see their uniqueness, and it's our job to sit down and take the time to think through together what is their uniqueness and to enjoy it. Reflect it back. Let your kids feel seen, noticed. That every one of them feels a connection with you and that you mamish rejoice in what's special about them. Not just rejoice when they happen to fulfill your needs, but I can enjoy you for who you are. That's seen. They have to be noticed. I try to, when the kids were growing up and I give them a bracha Friday night, I tried to whisper something unique in their ear after the bracha to tell them something I noticed that's special about them so they can feel connected. That's the attachment. Do you see that? Safe, secure, seen. And the last one is soothed. Soothed. They get bullied in the playground. And half of them, more, come home. They're terrified to say they're bullied because someone's going to yell at them. So why'd you play with them? Kid falls off a tricycle. And there's the Spanish Inquisition. Who left the tricycle out? Who left it out? How many homes, when something goes wrong and the kid gets hurt, there's this dion of who caused the hurt and who left the toy, and who left the rollerblades, and who left this and who did that, and now they tripped up and who did it? First take the shefel on your lap and love them, soothe them. Even if they did it to themselves, they left their own roller skates out and they slipped and they hurt themselves. First hold them, soothe them. Connect with them. Kal v'chayma if they did it to themselves. Kal v'chayma if they left their own rollerblade out and tripped over and hurt themselves. I told you not to leave it there. Told you. It's rishus. It's pashut rishus. But the worst part is it disconnects. First we have to soothe them. That's, you mentioned in the book, How to Talk So Kids Will Listen, Listen So Kids Will Talk, empathy. We have to empathize with their pain and their struggling. They'll come to see if you do it properly. They'll say, yeah, I shouldn't have left the rollerblade out. I say, I know, Shefela, but you hurt yourself. I feel bad for you. Our dogish is to connect to the soothing, to the caring, to the connectedness. So that when they grow up, they imagine a child that feels safe with us, that feels secure with us in our home. They feel seen by us. They feel we notice their uniqueness, and they feel soothed when they have their struggles in life. Rabbi say, that's the foundation of resilience. That's how we create resilient kids. Those 4 things is how we have to live our lives. always thinking those 4 S's every day of our lives, not just the 0 to 3, but all the way. That I provide as a parent an environment of safe, secure, seen, and soothed. I will create resilient kids who, if chas v'sholom they go through a traumatic experience, but their amygdala says, but mommy and tati are there to soothe me. They don't freak out. They don't disconnect. They come to you. They don't run away from you. They don't go looking for love on the streets. They don't look for drugs to heal themselves. They come to you because you're an authentic source of safe, secure, seen, and soothed. They come to you. That's how we create resilience. And I want to tell you one last thing. That's how we bring our kids back. It's the same model. It's the attachment. It's the relationship. It's when they struggle, we have to double up, triple up, quadruple up on the safe, secure, seen, and soothed to provide that for them until maybe they will heal and they will want to return to. We can't force kids to return to us. The more we muster them and threaten them and bribe them and this rewarding stuff, it's all foolishness. It's foolish without this. With this, I understand. Maybe we can speed it up a bit. But without this, it's utter foolishness. You'll bankrupt yourself. And you'll feel like taken advantage of with all the bribes and rewards and all the stuff you keep giving them, and it doesn't work. And every time you give them one thing, they want another thing. And you feel so taken advantage of, and then you get angry with them because you feel so hurt. Without safe, secure, seen, and soothed, it doesn't work. It's a waste of time. It's foolish. With safe, secure, seen, and soothed, and showing them caring with this toy and that toy, and it brings them close to you. It's a story of return as much as it's a story of resilience. For our healthy kids, the ones who don't go through trauma, it provides the most important ingredient any Jewish parent would ever see. My amygdala has no problem with that. I was loved growing up. So it's just the poster fell. I don't think the ceiling's falling in on me. It provides, if I can finish with this, the single most important factor, detail, consideration, and matara of all parenting for a frum home. Why is parenting so important? This word parenting sounds like a goyish word, parenting. It's not. Chinuch habonim, this parenting, you know why it's important? Because if we do the attachment properly, if we do the safe, secure, seen, and soothed, together with a framework of fair discipline, rules, structure, and discipline, in an environment of safe, secure, seen, and soothed, then our children are programmed with a dogma that when they get older, they can transfer to Rabboni Shalom, to the Av Harachamon, where they can have a relationship with Kudsha Brichu, where they understand the schar v'oinish, din v'cheshbon. But it's all meted out by a loving God who wants a relationship with us. When you do safe, secure, seen, and soothed, when you create this resilience, you've done something much more profound. You've created the foundation and basis on which your children will eventually be able to have a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. By transferring you as the Av Harachamon, you as the Aim Harachamon, to transfer that experience to Borei Olam, which is the tachlis of all parenting. It's what we want, where they have a framework for schar v'oinish in a loving environment of safe, secure, seen, and soothed. This is the matar and tachlis of all our parenting. So I both say, it's a system, it's perfect. All we have to do is work on these 4 concepts: safe, secure, seen, and soothed. Soll der Eibishter helfen. We will both create resilience, and with Hashem's help, we can help facilitate bringing him back. Thank you very much.